Snow pressed softly against the cafe windows like the world was trying to hush itself, and in that quiet pause, he believed his chance at happiness had already slipped away. The single father stood there with a phone still warm in his hand, a half-finished coffee growing cold on the table, convinced the blind date was over, convinced that once again life had chosen someone else over him. What he did not know was that on the other side of that glass, behind patience sharpened by wealth and loneliness, a billionaire woman was still waiting, not for perfection, but for the man he truly was. Before the story unfolds any further, take a moment to pause. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the quiet power of human connection, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel, Grandma Dearie. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. He had not planned to be late. Life as a single dad never allowed for smooth plans. His morning had begun before dawn in a small rented apartment in the Midwest, with a stubborn alarm clock and a 5-year-old daughter whose fever had spiked in the night. Between finding a neighbor to watch her and calling his boss to beg for time off, his confidence slowly eroded. By the time he reached the cafe, his jacket was dusted with snow, his hands were rough from years of work, and his heart was already braced for rejection. He was not a man who expected miracles anymore. The blind date had been arranged by a coworker who believed he deserved more than long shifts and lonely dinners. He walked in hopeful but guarded, scanning the warm interior filled with soft lights and quiet conversations. He waited, minutes passed, the chair across from him stayed empty. His phone buzzed with a message from his daughter's babysitter, asking another question he barely had the energy to answer. Embarrassment settled in like a familiar weight. He assumed she had taken one look at his profile, seen the word single dad, and changed her mind. It would not have been the first time. Unbeknownst to him, the woman he was waiting for had already arrived earlier and chosen a seat by the window. She was a billionaire by any financial definition, someone who moved markets and owned buildings that scraped the sky. But she had learned the hard way that wealth could not purchase sincerity. She had watched him from across the room, noting the way his shoulders curved inward from responsibility, the way his eyes softened when he read messages from his child. She did not approach immediately. She had waited, wanting to see who he was when he thought no one was watching. When he finally stood up, gathering his coat and resignation in one tired motion, she felt a sharp recognition of something rare. This was not a man playing a role. This was a man carrying a life on his back. She remained seated not out of arrogance, but out of patience, believing that if he left, he would do so honestly, without bitterness or entitlement. That honesty mattered more to her than charm. Outside, the cold hit him hard. He paused just beyond the door, breathing deeply, telling himself that disappointment was survivable. He thought of his daughter waiting at home, of the promise he had made to always come back smiling for her sake. That was when he noticed movement through the glass. The woman by the window had risen, her expression calm, her presence steady. She had not rushed him, had not chased him into the snow. She had simply waited until he was ready to be seen. Inside again, time seemed to slow. The cafe noise faded into a soft blur. He felt exposed, unpolished, unsure. His mind raced through apologies and explanations, but what stayed with him was her gaze, not judgmental, not curious in a shallow way, but deeply attentive. She saw him as he was in that moment, a father first, a man second, someone who measured his worth not by titles but by bedtime stories and scraped knees. In that recognition, something shifted. As they sat, the world outside continued its quiet fall of snow. The weight he carried did not vanish, but it felt shared, if only briefly. She had known luxury, but loneliness had been her constant companion. She had dated power and prestige, only to feel invisible in rooms full of attention. With him, there was no performance, no expectation. There was simply presence. She learned of his struggles through the careful way he spoke of work, through the pride and fear intertwined in every mention of his child. He learned of her world not through numbers or status, but through the fatigue in her eyes, the longing to be chosen for more than what she owned. The evening unfolded gently, without fireworks or grand declarations. It was in the small moments that meaning grew, in the way he checked the time, worried about getting home, in the way she noticed and respected that priority. For the first time in years, he did not feel like an inconvenience. For the first time in her life, she did not feel like a prize to be won. They were two people meeting at the intersection of vulnerability and hope. When they eventually parted, there was no certainty promised, no future guaranteed. Yet something profound lingered. He walked back into the cold feeling lighter than he had in a long time, not because his problems were solved, but because he had been understood. She watched him go, knowing that wealth had finally led her not to more, but to meaning. Her life did not transform overnight. He returned to his routines, to packed lunches and overtime hours. She returned to boardrooms and private flights, but something had changed in the quiet spaces of their lives. They stayed in touch slowly, intentionally. Trust built not on grand gestures, but on consistency. When challenges came, they faced them with honesty rather than fear. She learned the beauty of ordinary days. He learned that he was worthy of extraordinary love. Years later, in a home filled with laughter and warmth, he would look back on that snowy evening as the moment he almost walked away from his own happiness. Not because of doubt in her, but because of doubt in himself. She would remember it as the night she chose patience over assumption, humanity over status. If this story has touched your heart even a little, please take a moment now to like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Grandma Dearie. Your engagement helps keep stories of kindness and hope alive. And before this story ends, we have a special request for you. Please comment below with one word that describes how this story made you feel, because your words matter and someone else may find comfort in them. In the end, the blind date was never really about romance. It was about two wounded lives learning that waiting can be an act of courage, that love sometimes begins in silence, and that the most valuable things in life are not measured by wealth or timing, but by the willingness to truly